Ready to make a paper weaving? All right, let's get started. Remember, as always, you can weave with me or you can watch the video on your own and finish it afterward. All right, I have in front of me two different examples. One is a paper weaving using a manila folder. This is where a lot of people store files, has this little tab on top. So if you have one of those hanging around your house, you can definitely use those. And what's so great is they make a perfect loom because they're nice and thick. This one, I made it smaller and I made sure to use thick white paper. You can't use thin paper for a weaving for your loom because it needs to be strong. All right, those are our ideas. All right, so what do you need to make your project? You need scissors, a pencil, and paper. You need paper for your loom, which has to be thick, and then you need paper to weave, which does not have to be thick. It can be construction paper, it can be old drawings that you have, old paintings. I just pulled these. These are scrap paintings I had, and construction paper. Those things will make perfect weft strips for your weaving. All right. So if you want to use construction paper, you're going to fold it in half, just like this, for your loom. So this is construction paper. Oh, I'm sorry. This is actually thick paper. I know it's colored. This is thick paper, and I'm making my loom. So the first step to make your loom is to fold it in half. When you fold it in half, don't do a hot dog. Fold it hamburger. Make sure those corners are met up. All right, so it should kind of look like a little birthday card, just like that. So you have a open edge right here. This side is open, and then you have a folded edge. That's really important. It's going to come in handy in a moment. What you're going to do is make a line to show where to cut or where to stop your cuts. We're going to call this a stop line. So about 1.5 inches from the top, you can use a ruler, but I'm just going to eye it. I'm going to draw a horizontal line. Now look which side I'm drawing it on. I'm going to draw it on the open side. See how it's open? And the other side is folded. That's so important. Take your pencil, draw a horizontal line, just like that, left to right, across the top. You see how it's on the open side? That's how you should have it. Okay, across the top. Now, we're going to make the cuts for our loom. This is thick paper. We're making our loom before we can even weave. Now, I want to cut a couple strips all the way down. But I'm not going to cut all the way off my paper because if I cut all the way off my paper, I will be left with a strip. I want to cut slits. That's a better word for it. I want to cut slits. You can draw these like this. You can draw them like that, or you can just freehand them. Whatever works for you. I like to freehand them just because. But make sure when you are cutting that you don't make your cut too close to the edge. If it's too close, like maybe right there, then this little part of the paper is going to be really fragile and you don't want that. I would say make each cut about 1 inch wide, just like the stop line from the top. It almost, once we finish it, will look like piano keys. All right, here we go. I'm going to start cutting, holding it nice and tight. I'm not unfolding it. I'm keeping it folded. I'm going to cut from the folded side. That is so important. If I cut from the open side, I'm going to open it up and it's going to look really weird. That's not going to work. If you do that on accident, that's okay. You can just make another one. From the folded side, I'm going to cut, and when I reach this line, I stop. I do not go past the stop line. I'm just eyeing about 1 more inch across, 1 more inch wide. All right, here I am at the end. I don't think there's enough for 3, so I'm just gonna make this last 2 a little bit wider. That's totally fine. All right, you see how that works? It's like piano keys. Now this is folded. Let's open up and see what our loom looks like. Ooh, so here we have paper. It's still together. We did not cut all the way through, but now it has all of these slits. And all of these slits are where we are going to weave our strips through. So our loom is done. If you want to use a manila folder, I'll show you how to use that one. I just had this old manila folder. It has the little dips. You want to make sure your stop line is lower than the tabs. So I'm going to go a little bit lower right here. My stop line is right there, and now I know I can cut. My loom. I'm cutting from the folded side. And what's so great about these folders is they are already folded in half for you. So it makes one step easier. And they're nice and thick. Cut this one all the way through. So what is the name of what we are making right now? Do you remember? This is called a loom, and a loom is the structure or the backbone or skeleton of your whole weaving. Without it, your weaving wouldn't stick together, so you need it. All right, we have 2 different options. You choose which one you want the best. All right, now that we've made the loom, it's time to make our strips. When you make your strips, you're going to gather whatever paper you want, and you want to think about the colored paper that you're choosing. Maybe your loom is colorful like this one, or maybe it's plain. If it's plain, I would choose some colorful paper. If it is colorful, you can definitely use colorful paper, but you could also add some contrasting colors, some colors with white and maybe a little bit of color on it. So I'm actually going to use my manila folder, and that means I want some colorful paper. I want construction paper, my drawing, and this paper. I like those. I'm going to use all of those, and I know when I weave, I will weave them in a pattern instead of random. So I'm going to stack them all together. I really want to make sure they're all stacked together nice and neat. Even if they're a little bit different size, that's okay. Just slightly. Now, I'm going to take a trick. Actually, I'm only going to do two at once. I would not do more than 2. I learned that the hard way. And what I'm going to do is fold them in half. Remember doing that for the loom? Yep, we fold it in half. Now, because we are making the weft strips, we don't have to draw a stop line. We don't have to draw a stop line because we want to cut the paper all the way through to make a full strip. So, just like always, you can draw your lines like this, or you can freehand them. I'll show you what they look like drawn. All right, here we go. Take my scissors. I'm going to still cut on the folded side. Cut all the way to the top. And I'm going to try to hold it together so it doesn't slide as I cut. Ooh, look what happens. I just have 2 strips. When I unfold them, they're long strips. You definitely could cut all the way up, but when we fold it in half, look, you have halfway to cut, but you still get the full strip. Cut all the way. trying my best to cut nice and clean strips, making them nice and even. I have a bunch of yellow. Now I need my other colors. And I'm going to take these last three and fold them in half and cut. Eat up the corners, crease, crease. Make them about 1 inch wide. If you want to do different thicknesses, you could for your weft strips. I would probably not do different thicknesses for the loom. So maybe what I'll do is make these wide, and then the last couple, I'm going to make them a little bit thinner, a little bit narrower. Watch out for your fingers when you're cutting. All right, so here I have a lot of strips, and the drawing looks really cool when it is cut up. All right, so here I have all my options. Now it's time for me to figure out what pattern I want to weave these in. I have a lot of options, but I don't want it to be totally random. So I'm just going to start with a color pattern. Let's do yellow. I'm going to arrange them on. I'm not worried about weaving them yet. Yellow, dots, green, drawing. That's my pattern. So I just repeat it. Yellow, I might do some thin dots, green, drawing, yellow, wide dots, green, and thin drawing. Now I have a lot of extra strips, which is great, which means I could make another weaving, but for now I'm going to just use these, set these out of my way. And if you're looking at this and you want to change it up, you could always move things around. This is the point where you can really design how you want your weaving to look. All right, so now it's time for us to actually weave. I'm going to only keep the first couple since I already know my pattern. I know it's yellow, dots, green, and drawing, and I'll just repeat it again and again. So when you are weaving, you weave, the pattern is over, under, over, under, over, under, over, under. So let's see how that works. All right, I'm going to lift up the second one because I'm going over the first one. So over, under the second one, over the first warp strip. This is called, all these vertical strips are called the warp strip. Even though they're part of the whole loom, they still have their own name. This is the weft strip. It goes over, then under. Over, I lift up the third to send it under. And it will start to make a checkerboard pattern. Over, under, over, and under. There we go. Okay? All right. Now, if you're doing this and let's say it looked like that, on these last two, you went over two warp papers. You can't go over two, you can only go over one. So if you're making it, if it looks like that, or let's say it looks like you wove it through and it looks something like this, you went over 3 instead of going under one of them. So if that happens, you can just lift it up, lift up the one it goes under, send it through, and then fix it. So when you're weaving, check every single strip to make sure it's right before you grab that second strip. So yellow, and what I'm going to do is really tighten it up all the way to the top. I don't want to leave big gaps in between my weaving. I want to tighten it, kind of scoop it up with my fingers. All right, yellow dots. Okay, now I want you to look at this and let's talk about it. I just wove my second strip through correctly, right? Wrong. I didn't do it right because this was my second row. It has to start opposite. That's what we're talking about when we say the weaving pattern. The weaving pattern refers to rows. If the first row starts over, the second row cannot start over. It has to start under. So if I lifted this up, this strip would just slide all the way down to sit on top of the yellow. That won't work. So let's start again. My first row started over. My second row has to start opposite, which is under. Lift up the first warp. Under, over. Under, over. Under, over. Under, over. And there we have it. Now this strip won't slide right there because it's woven correctly. I want to push it up. That means I'm tightening my strip. Don't worry if there's a little bit of overlap onto the edge. And there we have it, my first 2 rows. Yellow, dots, green, and then to the drawing. All right, the third row, I'm back to starting over because that's opposite from under. Over, under, over, under. I lift up the strip that I want my weft, or lift up the warp strip that I want my strip to go under. Over and under. Do I leave it like that? Nope, I push it in nice and tight. Push it in, trying not to tear it. And the drawing. Under, over, under, over, under, over, under, over. Push it in. All right, this is the start of my weaving pattern. Now we're going back to the yellow. See how I'm lifting up the strip? I want it to go underneath. Push it in. I'm going to do a narrow dot. Under, over, under, over, under, over, under, over. Sometimes I go from the top and I just push in to see if I missed any tightness. I just push it in a little bit more and I get a little bit more room. Push. There we go. All right, green. Oops. See, I almost started the incorrect way. I have to just always check myself. All right, there we go. Looking good. I'm about halfway done. Green and drawing. Let's do the thick drawing. If you're watching this on Friday, May 7th, just so you know, Mother's Day is on Sunday. So if you want to give your mom a sweet gift, homemade gift, this would be perfect. You can use it as a placemat. You could set your plate on it. Pretty sweet. I think mom would be happy if you have a mom in your life who you want to tell that you love her. This is a great gift. Okay. Do I start over or under on this next row? Over. That's right. That's opposite from the one before. Sometimes they'll flip up. Just pull them back down. Okay, there we go. All right, I'm getting less and less space the further I weave down. So it might be a little bit harder to pull up, but we'll work with what we got. All right, yellow, and what comes after yellow? A dot. Under, over, under, dot, green, this way. Push it up. Oh, I did that one wrong. Look at that. I wasn't paying close enough attention. I got all confused when I flipped it around. All right, so what did I do wrong right here? I went over 2. If that happens, you can pull it out all the way, or you can pull it out to the point where you made a mistake. All right, lift up this one. I'm glad I caught that. There we go. No worries if you make a mistake as you're weaving. You'll have to make the mistakes for yourself to learn. If you don't make mistakes, it might mean that you're not trying hard enough. All right, we're getting there. Things are getting tighter. I'm getting less and less space, but I think I have space for one more weft strip. Under, over, under, over. Kind of weaving it through, lifting up underneath, lifting up the warp string or the warp paper from underneath the whole loom. Let's see, guys. Tighten it up. Ooh, okay, I'm just going to tighten up all the weft strips from the edges. There we have it. All right, my weaving is complete. I hope that you really enjoyed this project and that you make mistakes so that you can learn and you give it to someone you love. So I did want to say, when you're finishing your weaving and you get all the way down to the bottom and maybe there's a little bit more room, like you cut the slit a little bit longer when you're making your loom, you can always just cut a really narrow strip, a narrower strip, and weave it through. But if it gets too tight like it did on mine, you can kind of see, then you might not have enough room and you can just leave it. Make sure you write your name on the back, write the year, let's say the month and year, May 2021. You always remember. And take a photo of it. Email it to me. I really want to see your creations. All right. Message me if you need any help. I'll be here. And good luck, guys.